So the first thing we want to do here is we want to get these guards out of our way. We'll pull these all off of here. I got this one loose already. Pull it off. Grease hose going to this back pin on the cylinders broke off. We'll have to fix that before we put it back together. It looks like it's been re-engineered several times, but we'll get that all fixed up when we go back together. So the anchor pins on the rod end, pull the anchor bolt out. They use a little fork like that to straddle that pin. Same way with this little tilt cylinder here. Exact same thing. We'll leave the pins in it for now, so we're going to get that flange broke loose right there. And the best way to do that is take a hammer and tap on that head gland and rattle that thread loose a little bit. Just makes it, just seems like it. You get one, you can't get it off. Next thing you know, it comes right off for you. I like to take a welding glove and a tie strap and wrap a welding glove and a tie strap around that, just so that if my wrench ever slipped off, it wouldn't scratch my rod. Tie strap's pretty cheap. Rod's pretty expensive. Set him on there like that. We'll have to get us something to catch our oil in. In the meantime, we're going to take these lines loose and we're going to plug our lines with our plugs. O-ring face plugs. Worth their weight in gold. Make sure your O-ring's in your fitting before you put it on there. We'll get something to catch all that oil and we'll pull these lines loose real quick. We'll set a couple timbers underneath here to hold that barrel. There she is. So we'll take this one in and put it on the workbench. We're going to pull this tilt cylinder off next right here. We'll get this barrel down out of our way. We'll swing this around. We'll pull this one apart next. This nice rag. It's good and clean. Put a little tape around the end of that. Like that. Take that block of wood off and set her back down. She can stay there until we get ready to put her back together again. We knocked the pin out of this one. And you can walk around it with a hammer and beat on it, loosen it up a little bit. Sometimes it's easier to unpin it here and bring it around here and pin it so you can get some leverage on it. But I'm going to try it like this first and see if it wants to give up. If it wants to give up, good deal. If it don't want to give up, we'll have to use some different measures to work on it. So. So there's your tilt cylinder. And get this plugged up so we don't get any dirt in it. That baby had some Loctite on it. Look at that. Holy cow. Pull the piston off. At one point in time, it looks to me like it had a real problem. You can see where the shaft, you see where something broke off in there, and it hit it here and hit it here, which is not really hurting anything, but I'm starting to wonder what the inside of my barrel looks like now. We'll get her all cleaned up and we'll find out, but you can see where at one point in time something bad's happened to that cylinder. So we'll take a look. We'll keep looking and we'll see what we find. We'll slide the head gland off of here. You can see it's pretty bad shape. It needs cleaned up. We'll get all this stuff cleaned up. We'll get all of it cleaned up and we'll go again. Oh, piston, head gland, new seal kit. Here's all our new seals. We're just getting ready to start picking out the bearing. The smaller these bearings get, like this right here, the harder they are to get out. So when I get one like this, if I get a pick in there behind it, what I like to do is take a pair of needle nose pliers and get in there and try to wind it up and pull it out. And usually you can do pretty good like that. But the smaller they are, the more aggravating they are to get out of there. Pretty tough little rascal right there. But that's the bearing on the bottom. The one in the middle is going to be your buffer seal. It's going to be in two pieces like this right here. It looks kind of like a U-cup on the bottom side, and then on the top it's got that little nylon piece that, like a little backup ring. But it's tiny. You're going to have to go in there and pick that out of there. And the smaller they are, the harder they are to get out of there. But I usually get a pretty good bite with these picks, which I showed you before. So there's the backer. And that other one is probably going to be pretty brittle because it's old. The older they are, the harder they are to get out of there. And usually you don't get them out in one piece. They usually come out in multiple pieces. But yeah, we might get that one in one piece. By golly, we're going to get it in one piece. So there's the rest of the buffer seal. And then the U-cup is the next groove up. And that's the one that does all the work. The U-cup. And then the very last one would be your wiper. So I've showed you before that fancy little tool. If you haven't seen it yet, I'll show it to you again. It's a broke off Matco punch, pin punch, and I ground an angle on it. So this side's a radius and it's got a sharp edge on it, and I get that right down in the edge where that metal back wiper goes and start trying to fold it over. And once you get it folded over, then you can get in there with a screwdriver and pop him right out of there. That rascal's got some meat behind it. I got her shrunk enough now, she's coming out of there though. You can see how that punch rolls that over where you can get in behind it there, but that's a pretty tough seal now, I'm going to tell you what. So now we're going to get all this cleaned up. Everything's out of it except for this barrel seal, which there's supposed to be a backup ring and then an O-ring. And guess what? There's no backup ring. It's gone. Why? I don't know, but it's completely gone. So we'll get all this stuff cleaned up Well, we might as well take the piston apart. So we take the bearing off the piston. Well, it's a stiff one too, I'll tell you. Got the bearing on the piston. So then what you've got is you've got a two-piece. This one is a little different than the one that's going to go on. So this one here is a split outer. You pop him off of there once. So there's your split outer. And the one underneath of that is the expander. I'll get him coming my way here. So that's your expander ring. So take all your old parts and look at your new parts and see if they're similar to being the same size, the same thickness, the same width, and make sure you're comparing apples to apples, because you don't want to have a problem. You want to just make sure that everything looks copacetically the same, outer diameter to inner diameter and everything like that. Just make sure they all look pretty close so that you don't end up having a problem. And with that being said, they all look pretty similar. We know we got the right kit, so we'll start out. We're going to start out with the middle groove in the head gland. So if you look here, you'll see that this groove here would be for the buffer, the U-cup, the wiper, and down here would be your bearing, and this would be your backup and your O-ring for your barrel. So we're going to start with that buffer seal because it's going in the middle. And remember that the U part of it goes down. We'll get him started in there. Get that first part of that buffer seal put in there. Like that. Run your finger around it. Make sure it's flat. And then we're going to put the other part, the top part, on top of that. Get it started in the groove. And walk it around nice and easy. Just got to have a little patience. Sooner or later it'll sneak in there. So there is your buffer seal right there. So now we're going to go with the U-cup. So this U-cup is another one. It's really, really stiff. And you're not going to be able to put it in there by hand. So we're going to use a U-cup tool. And remember that the open part of it goes down. So we're going to put our U-cup in our tool and we're going to wind it up. When you get it wound up, it's going to look like that. We're going to walk right down in that U-cup groove and set him in there. The smaller they are, the harder they are to get started in the groove. Once you get him started, let your U-cup tool unwind real slow like. They are amazing how they work. And they're not that expensive. You can buy them online anywhere. A set of 3 I think is like, I don't know, $60 something like that. So there's your U-cup installed and it's in the groove where it belongs. So now we're going to put the bearing in the back end of it, which if you just wind it up and set him in there, set him in the hole and then push him down, They usually just snap right in place. Usually. Run your finger around it. So when you look in there, you'll see he's snapped in place there. So the only thing left now is the go ahead and put the backup ring on, and then we're going to put the O-ring on. Put the backup ring on first. Get him down in the groove and get him straight. Once you get him laying flat, get your O-ring, put your O-ring on there and get him started. Try not to twist him. I like to just walk him down with my fingers as best I can. And then once you get him in position, then turn him a little bit, and if he's crooked, he'll straighten up. So there's your O-ring and your backup ring. Now the only thing left is the wiper. So this wiper, you can see how tough of a wiper that is. That's why it was so hard to get out. It's a double lip wiper, a metal back double lip wiper. It's a tough one. So you know we're going to put a little bit of Loctite on there so that we don't want him to slide up the rod. We want to make sure he stays where he's supposed to be, because that really helps keep all the garbage out of your hydraulic system. So we'll put a little Loctite on him, and then we'll tap him in place. All the way around, nice and pretty. Set him on there like that. Wipe off that excess Loctite. So he's flush all the way around. So that part's done. Now we're going to go to the piston. So remember, we got an expander that goes in first. So we're going to put our expander on there. Make sure it's not twisted. You got a little twist in this one here. I got to get the twist out of it. Once you get the twist out of it, you see it's laying flat in the groove all the way around. So now we're down to the, you remember the other one had a split ring like this. They changed the design, so now we got one that's a one piece, so we're gonna warm it up. If you use hot water, get it good and hot. If you want to use a heat gun, don't get it too hot. We're gonna use a heat gun today. We're gonna heat her up. And then we're going to get one side started, and then we'll take our fingers and we'll work our way around the other side. But we got to get her hot first. We'll just keep turning it in our fingers, and you'll feel your fingers, the heat on the ring, without getting it too hot. Turn it over every now and then. it gets warm enough you can't hardly touch it, that's about the time it's ready to put on there. You don't want to burn your hands, and you don't want to damage the ring either. So get started in the groove and just walk him around ever so nicely. Get him sitting on top of that wiper or the expander, and then we'll let him cool off. And when he cools off, he'll shrink back up into his normal place. So you see he's on there right there like that, right? So now we'll get the bearing. The bearing just snaps on top. Snaps in the groove like that. And now we're ready to put the head gland and all that. We're going to lube it all up with white lubricate. And we'll go back and we'll bolt it back in, and we're going to check our. So if you're wondering what this thing here is, this is a rope that's attached to the end of my overhead crane. So you can pull it from one end of the shop all the way around to the other side. And I got lights up on top of it that follow you around, so when I'm working on something, I bring the lights right back over the top of what I'm working on. It really works out well. I did do that right. I really like that. So we've checked our rod, and our rod is all good and smooth. There's no nicks in it. And now we're getting ready to put her back together again, so we're going to set on her collar for our head gland first. And then we're putting white lithium lube all up inside the head gland. And around the outside, and around the U-cup, around everything. The bearing and everything. So when we get ready to put this on here, it's all lubricated. It's not going to try to tear anything. And get it started on that taper. Sometimes it just takes a little bit to get it started on that taper. And there she goes. So that wasn't so bad, was it? No. Now, we're going to wipe that excess grease off of that thread on the inside there, because eventually we're going to have Loctite on that thread. We set our piston on there. We're not going to lubricate the piston until we get ready to put it in the barrel. But when we get ready to put it in the barrel, we'll lube this all up with white lithium grease too. Get it set on there like that. We're going to put some Loctite on that bolt that we're going to thread in to hold that piston on there. You don't need to do the whole bolt. When they came out, it looked like somebody had poured a half a gallon of Loctite on that bolt. Half of that bolt doesn't even thread in there. Half of that bolt's sitting in the piston, but the last 3/4 of an inch of threads, you know, that actually threads into the rod. So give her that, run her up with an air wrench, and then we're going to tighten it the same way we took it off with the 1-inch breaker bar. Like that. Put our crutch underneath of here. And then we'll put our 1-inch breaker bar on that. We're going to tighten that baby down. So there you have it. That's about as tight as it was when I took it off. So we got our caps off, we got our rag off the end of the barrel, we looked in there, we made sure it was clean, we got everything lubed up, we're ready to put the tilt cylinder back together. So we're going to set her in there. like to keep that where that piston ring comes together on the top. I also like to face my grease fitting on my rod the way that it's going to face, which is going to be out here so you can grease it. So, right there, she started in. Get our spacers under there. One on top, one on bottom. Get our pin put back in it. Once we get our head gland put on, that needs a little love tap. Now then, alrighty then, cut that off of there. The tricky part about them cylinders there, that them two bushings have got to go in there before you get it back into where it belongs, because otherwise they won't go in. They fit that tight. Get it in there and get her lined up. Get our little wedge and put our wedge back on there. Retains that pin. Tighten the bolt up that anchors it. We'll put our hoses back on. We'll have this one done. Then what we'll do is we'll put this swing cylinder back on. And then we'll swing it the other way and we'll do the one on the other side. So basically they all go together the same. just make sure you keep it clean. And always keep it clean. So if you like this video, give us a thumbs up. And like always, we thank you for watching.